So for this simple cushion, I'm going to show you a couple of ways of doing different cushions, but this one is literally a folded cushion, like a pillowcase type. So for this, you're going to need a pair of scissors, a long rule, and I have got these lovely wooden long rules. They're really handy. Your pin cushion, a pen if you want to mark out. But the first thing that you're going to do is I've actually bought, this is 1/2 metre of fabric, but I've already cut it down. So I'm going to make myself a 14-inch cushion. Now the reason that I'm working in inches, and this is mainly for the younger students, pillows generally come in inches. They do come in centimetres, but they tend to be off numbers. So instead of being 14, they will say they're 35 or 36 centimetres. Inches when it comes to cushions are just a lot easier to work with. So I want a length of fabric first. So you can see I've got one length of fabric. So this is 45 inches, 114 centimetres wide. So there's the edge on one piece, of salvage edge, and there's the salvage edge on the other. So when we talk of salvage edges, we basically mean the edge that doesn't fray away. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this whole length into 15 centimetre length, going this way. The reason I'm doing it is 15 centimetres is because I need to allow myself a seam allowance down the edge, which is half an inch or 1.5 centimetres down the side. So to do this, you can either get your rule and mark all the way down your 15 centimetres using a pen. So again, because it's inside, it doesn't matter if you're using a pen. So I would take from that edge, if I'm laying out my fabric, do it from the wrong side first. So I've already cut this, but say I was cutting it down to 15 or even to 14, I would literally put a little mark there on my fabric, and I would do that all the way down my fabric. So 14, 14. I would then turn my rule and actually join up all of those lines so you get yourself a nice neat edge. All right. So once you've done that, and obviously now I've already cut this, so once you've got your nice neat edge, you can just cut straight across it. Now I've already cut my piece of 15 centimetres. I'm then going to fold my piece of fabric to create my little cushion cover. So I'm going to fold it in half, but as we are only going to be sewing this edge for to stuff the cushion into, we don't actually need to leave seam allowance at the ends. But the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to turn over this edge here, and it doesn't matter if it's not perfect, so you can mark it off or you might not want to mark it off, but I want to turn it over so you've got a nice flat edge on your front. So, and then I'm going to iron that flat there, and then I'm going to sew down that edge. Now, just so I'm not wasting time, I am going to literally just pin it for now. All right, you would sew it. I'm going to pin it because I'm just showing you how you would make this this cushion cover. So once I have pinned that into place, but you would have sewn it, so you pinned it, and then you're going to sew down that line. So the next thing that I've got to do is I've got to make my cushion this way 14 inches. But you want to allow yourself a pocket. So I'm going to lay my piece on top of one another there. I'm then going to be looking at, wrong end of the rule. So I want to create 14 inches. Now there is my 14 inches and there is my flap over. Now to me, that's a little bit high because I can't actually get my cushion inside. So I'm going to drop that down. And again, you can do this by eye, or if you're making many of them, you might want to do it by having the same amount. So if I move that down to say 12 centimetres there all the way across, so that's 12 centimetres, and that should also be 12 centimetres. I'm then going to flap this piece of fabric over the top here, first of all, sorry, missed out a step. So I've got 12 centimetres there, and this is 14. So I'm then going to be putting a little pin just in there on my 14 centimetres, inches, not centimetres, sorry, 14 inches. I'm then going to push that over to that mark, that line, and lay this seam on top of the other seam. So I'm going to turn it over carefully, and you can see, if I just get my rule here, that should be 14 inches, and that is also 14 inches. So obviously we've got too much fabric underneath here, so now we want to remove some of this. So I'm going to go back to this side, and now I know that that is in the right place. I'm going to put a little pin just at the top of this section and a little pin at the bottom of this section. Now again, like all things, this is artistic license, and this is completely up to you how you do this next stage. Now, depending on how much fabric you want inside, depends on how much you want to push your cushion into. Now, I would always recommend that you go about halfway, because you've got to turn a seam allowance on that. So from this point, half of 14 is 7. So at that point, I would mark down, and I'm going to use my pen here so I can give myself a nice line. I'm going to mark down, and I wouldn't do it in your Sharpie pen. I would do it in a different pen, just a pencil, just in case it goes through your fabric. I'm doing it in a Sharpie so I can see it, and so can you. So 7 inches all the way down, just like so. And as you can see, I've only done 3 marks, but because I've got this really long rule, I can mark it quite nicely all the way along. Okay, so I'm going to pop that out of the way. I'm then going to cut on this line, this 7-inch line. So I've got this nice seam there. And then before I sew my edges here, I'm just going to turn that edge back like we did before, press it down using my iron. So I'm going to imagine I've pressed this down, and I have now just ironed it and sewn it. Okay, so we have, when you look at it, you've got that piece that's turned in there, and you've got now that bit there. Because you've pinned it here, leave it as it is. Don't actually undo these pins, because you know that that is 14 inches. This is 15 inches. This is 14, because you're not going to be sewing these ends. So once you've sewn that bit, you come back to the table, and obviously as you've got these pins in place, everything should actually just link together quite nicely. I'm then going to add myself a few more pins along the edge here. And I'm also going to do the same on the other side. Once I've done that, I'm going to, on my sewing machine, just run my normal seam allowance, which is 1.5 centimetres or 1/2 inch for some people. Going to run that down the edge there. And once I've done that, I'm just going to turn it through, and you're going to end up with a lovely bag. I'm going to do that quickly, and then you can see my outcome. So I've just quickly sewn all the edges together. So this one I haven't actually overlocked or zigzagged. So each of these edges, it might be just worth you giving them a quick zigzag over so they don't fray away. And as you can see, I haven't sewn across the top there. I have just sewn down that edge and down that edge. And when we come to turn it through, your corners, you just push out your corners on each of these, like so. And the same with the one down the bottom here. So again, if you want to zigzag just across those bottom bits, that will just stop them fraying away. And lastly, the last corner, should we just push out like so. And there it is. You have one pocket pillow. Like so. If you want to make it slightly simpler, if you don't want to actually put a pocket in it. And I know I spoke to one young lady who was telling me you could also, young lady that was telling me she's just got 2 squares to do on hers. So you can put your 2 squares right sides together, and you would literally, like before, just sew all the way around the edges, leaving an opening up here. So you'd start from this point, going all the way round, stopping at this point, turning it through, and then once you've put your pillow in, you just hand sew that piece together, closed. But this piece, this is quite a nice one because it's just a flap over cushion pad. But also you could actually do your flap so it goes the other way, so it's slightly longer. So if you were to just push it in the other way, so it sits over the top. But it's completely up to you how you want to do it. Anyway, there we go. Simple, easy peasy, no time at all, cushion cover.